New chapter.
Good evening. Hope all of you are doing well. Tonight we will be beginning a new parak Ha'isha, and that is Daf Pei Zayin in Maseches Pesachim Paz. We're going to be learning a whole bunch of sugyas that relate to women and Korban Pesach. There are, of course, just a general shaila of the chiyuv of a woman by Korban Pesach. We do presume that a woman might be chayeves, but afalpi that it's mitzvah seishas man grama. Okay, that's not going to be our sugya for tonight. But as we start our mission on the top of Pei Zayin Amud Aleph, what we are going to do is discuss when a woman is married and she has both a father and a husband who had her in mind to be memuna, to be a part of the count for a Korban Pesach. So one of the people to eat a kizayis of the Korban Pesach at this woman's father's house was this woman, and at the husband's house as well. So there was two Korbanos Pesach, and each one had a kizayis with this woman's name on it. So what's the din? So the Mishnah opens at the top of Perek Ha'isha Daf Pei Zayin Amud Aleph Ha'isha Bizman She Bebeis Baila, when a woman is living in her own apartment with her husband, but at the same time, Shachat Aleha Baila V'Shachat Aleha Avia, two different people allocated part of their Korban Pesach for her. The halacha is Tochal Mishel Baila. She should eat from the Korban Pesach that her husband prepared for her. It's not so surprising, but Davak Be'ishto V'Yul V'Asar Echad, pretty normal. Halcha Regel Rishon La'asos Bebeis Avia. If she decided to have yontif by her father's house, and at that home, the same thing happened. Shachar Aleha Avia V'Shachar Aleha Baila. I don't know why the son-in-law wasn't included in the father-in-law's korban, but anyways, the husband and the father did the same thing. So the halacha is tochal b'makom shehirotze. She can eat from whichever korban she chooses. What about a yasom, a person who has no parents? Yasom sheshachto alav aputropsin. They have people who are guardians who are making a korban on behalf of a yasom. The halacha is yochal b'makom shehirotze. He can choose where and what he eats. Eved shel shnei shutfen lo yochal mishel shnehen. An eved who is shared by two people, we cannot just simply assume that either one of them is okay, because maybe one excluded him intentionally. So the Rashi here writes that this only would work, the only time he could eat is where the two bailim get together and they say, yes, we have a shared eved, who's going to feed him, me or you? And once they decide that, then he can partake of that person's. But stam, without a dialogue, that's not going to work. And most complicated case of the Mishnah, mishachetzio eved v'chetzio ben chorin lo yochal mishel rabo. If you have a person who is half Eved and half Ben Chorin, this is a very complicated case because there's an aspect of this person that is still not mechuyav because he's a Chetzio Eved and Chetzio Ben Chorin. So it's not so pasha that he could bring it at all. Lo yochal mishal rabo, he cannot eat. Now, one of the cases where the Gemara is going to pick up on as we open the Gemara 10 lines down on Pei Zayin Amud Aleph is the case where she went to her father's house. She then was offered a Korban Pesach by her husband and by her father. We said in the Mishnah she can choose. So then the Gemara says, Shamas Mino Yesh Breira. It seems to be that we have what's called Breira. We've learned about this a number of times in Shas, well-known Shas Sugya. The concept of Breira is where we have a reality right now that's based on an indecision from prior, and the reality now, we are allowed to assume what could have been prior, even though it didn't happen that way. So what's going on here? The assumption is that when it comes time for her to eat from the Korban Pesach, she gets to pick. But if she gets to pick, well, what happened? What was the kavanah during the Korban? So what was her kavanah? So we say yesh breira, that we can retroactively allow her to choose whichever one she wants. So that seems to imply from our Mishnah, yesh breira, says the Gemara, nope, not quite. My rotze, when the Mishnah says that if tochal b'makom shehi rotza, that she can eat from whichever Korban Pesach she wants, that was talking about where was her ratzon b'shas shchita. It's not a case of breira. The rotza was from the time of the korban, in which case breira is not relevant. Breira is only a question when you're looking in the past at an episode that had a lack of clarity. We don't know who did the shchita, but here that's what the Gemara is qualifying to say that yes, we do know who brought this korban, and that's how the Gemara gets out of the breira question. This Mishnah is not supporting the shita of yesh breira, but rather when the wife was choosing if she wanted to partake from the korban pesach of her husband or of her father, that rotza, her desire, was evident already b'shas shchita. So therefore, this is not the sugya of breira. Breira is only looking in the past, not looking in the present. Or in Minhu, we have a question that is raised from the Tanoim. What is the question of the Gemara? Says the Gemara, Isha regel harishon. Ocheles Mishal Aviha, a woman who is by regel Rishon, and everybody makes her a korban, so she has to eat from her father's house. That's not what our Mishnah said. Our Mishnah said she gets to choose. That's a stira in the Tanaim. Let's finish out this brisa. Mikan va'elach, after the regel Rishon, Ocheles Michel Avi. Mikan va'elach rotze ocheles Michel Avi, rotze Michel Baila. At that point, she gets to choose. But by the first regal, she doesn't get to choose. But that's a seer in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says she gets to choose. On the regal Rishon, and the Brisa says she does not. How does the Gemara answer that question? 12, 13 lines down. Lo kasha kan b'redufa leilech. She was excited to be at her father's house. Kan b'she'ena redufa, but where she's not excited, so then she follows. Isha regel ochels mishavi, and then she can choose. But if she's excited to go to her father's house, then she should eat from her father's house. Tichsiv, as the pasuk writes, az hayisi be'inav kemotzeis shalom, a very peaceful relationship, as referenced by the pasuk. Va'amar Rav Yochanan kikala shenimtzeis shlema beveis chamia uredufa leilech lahagid shivacha beveis avia. She's so excited to run to her beis avia to tell him how amazing the relationship is with her husband and with her husband's parents, the in-laws. We got a good one. Everything is good. The relationship is givaldic. So that level of comfort and desire to be by her father's house is enough of a gorim to require her to eat from the korban pesach of her father. The Meforshim point out that this is not kidduch ksiv, but rather ksiv. And we're going to begin now a number of agaritas that will take up the entire blot, for the remaining blot for the day. Says the Gemara's Fals ksiv, the pasuk writes, v'haya Bayom hahu ne'um Hashem tikri'i ishi v'lo tikri'i li od ba'ali. At some point, you're going to start calling me your husband, the mashal of the Klal Yisrael to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're going to start calling me your husband instead of, and you're going to call me my, woman will say my husband instead of my master, ba'ali. Amar Rav Yochanan kikala beveis chamia v'lo kikala beveis aviha. There's no comparison. Once to make someone comfortable, beveis chamia in the in-laws house is much more of an accomplishment than it would be beveis aviha. Referring to a young woman who has yet to be developed. She doesn't have the capacity to nurse. She has no breasts. Amar Rav Yochanan zo Elam. This is a reference to the city of Elam. Rashi writes, this is where Daniel was from. Rashi, 2 inches below where we are, Ramaskel zo Elam shayabad Daniel. Shene'emar bani b'Shushan asher be'Elam. So that's where he lived. What is unique about this, and what is the comparison to a young girl that is in a scenario who cannot nurse? You're able to learn, but you're not able to teach. So the mashal, of course, is by the nursing mother. She's able to give milk to others. But Shadaim Einla, this city of Elam was incapable of teaching. Well, I don't know what the challenge was, but they were incapable of teaching. So that pasuk is a reference to the times of Daniel in that city. What does the pasuk mean in Shir Hashem ani choma v'shadai kimigdalos? What does it mean that says that I am like a wall v'shadai kimigdalos? And yes, she is developed and can nurse. So that Amar Rav Yochanan ani choma zo Torah. The Torah always protects us like the wall of a city. V'shadai kimigdalos. What does it mean that she was able to nurse? That she was developed? Elu talmidei chachamim who teach Torah to others, just like a mother can nurse a child. The Rava Amar, another pshat in this pasuk, ani choma zo knesses Yisrael. When it says ani choma, I am the wall, this is a reference to the Jewish people. V'shadai kimigdalos, that a woman is developed and able to nurse. Elu bate knesios bate midrashos, like the place that we're in right now. These are places where people are yonik from, that they draw from, just like a nursing mother gives to her child. Amar Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia, Amar Rav, this is all the early Amoraim, and we're trying to figure out the following pasuk. See, what does the pasuk mean? It says, Asher b'neinu kinetiim megudalim b'nu ureihem, that our boys are like small trees, saplings that grew up in their youth. B'noseinu, our daughters are kizavios mechutavos tavnis heichal, are like the corners of the heichal that are formed in the heichal. What's pshat in this pasuk? Asher b'neinu kinetiim. What does it mean that our boys are like saplings? So says the Gemara, Elu b'achure Yisrael shelo toamu tamchet, the purity, the innocence of childhood, that they were not toim tamchet. B'nosenu kizavios. What does it mean that our daughters are like corners? Corners have no doors. So says the Gemara, Elu b'sulos Yisrael she'ogdos pischein leba'aleim. These are there's a machlokas in Rashi here. Rashi, I should say, quotes two shitas. It's either focusing on the b'sulos Yisrael. These are women who had maintained their besulim, that they had never had tashma shamita, she'ogdos, that they close off themselves, leba'alein, until they're married. But the second shita in Rashi says no, that it's referring to the ogdos from the word magid lahagid, that they would tell their spouses when they were anida, so that they could avoid all of the isurim of tashma shamita with a woman who is anida. V'chein hu omer, and similarly, assuming this fits perfectly with the second shita in Rashi about the fact that it was a reference to them being ogdos pischein leba'alei, and to reference when a woman would begin bleeding for hilchos nida. V'chein hu omer, similarly, malu kimizrak kizavios mizbech, just like the mizbech had blood on it from the Zrikos Adam, so too a reference to the woman, the word Zavios has a reference to that. However, some say that that's not what the word means, but rather Mehacha, Mezavinu Maleim, Mefikim, Mizan Elzan, another reference to the word Zavis that could connect back to our understanding of this pasuk that refers to women as Benosenu, Kiz Zavios. What does the pasuk then mean at the end of the pasuk? Why is it referencing these boys who are like saplings that shalotam tamchet, and the women who are like zavios that they're magidin pischein leba'alein? What's the merit of these two people? That's pshat in the pasuk. Mechot was tabnis heichal elu ve'elu male alein akasuv kilu nivne heichal bimein. Wow! If someone is not toim tamchet, so then wonderful. That is as if they built the heichal in their days. And if a woman is makbid on hilchos nida, or if a woman maintains her basulim until she gets married, there too, whichever pshat and Rashi is correct, then it's as if ki'ilu nivne heichal bimein. We sometimes overlook the most simple things, just avoiding the averas. It's ki'ilu nivne heichal. It's a very powerful idea. The pasuk reads, Diber Hashem, Diber. The pasuk says Dvar, neither. Dvar Hashem asher haya el Hosea v'gomer b'mei Uziyahu yosam achaz Yechizkiyahu melech Yehuda. This pasuk references the following idea. First of the long lines, 10, 12 lines from the bottom of the page, Pezayin Madal, Peperik Echad, in one chapter in history, in one short time, Nisnabu Dalad Nevi'im, there were 4 Nevi'im that were giving Nevuah, the Gadol Shebekulan Hosea, and the greatest of them was Hosea. Shene'emar Tchilas Dvar Hashem beHosea. The first conversation was with Hosea. Says the Gemara, the obvious question, V'chi beHosea Diber Tchila. No, he was not the first Navi. V'halom Moshe ad Hosea Kama Nevi'im. There were plenty of Nevi'im between Moshe and Hosea. So what's shot in the pasuk that they started talking about Hosea? Says the Gemara, an obvious answer. 3 lines into the wide lines, Amar Rav Yochanan Tchila la'arba Nevi'im. Of these 4, Hosea was the most critical. Shenisnabu boso parak, who were giving Nevuah at that time. Elohein, who were the 4? Hosea, Yeshaya, Amos, Umicha. The Gemara now tells a particularly disturbing story about Hosea. He got himself into a little bit of trouble, and then he did tshuva, and he got himself out of trouble. But it wasn't good for the Jewish people, and this is it's really an uncomfortable story in a way, as we'll see shortly. Of course, Hosea is a navi. His job is to rebuke the Jewish people. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Hosea, "Banecha chatu." The people are not doing right. The Jewish people have sinned. Now, what should he have answered? What should have Hosea's answer been? The same as it was by Moshe and many other Nevi'im. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they're your children. You should forgive them. B'nei chanunechahim. These are the children of your kindness. B'nei Avram, Yitzchak, v'Yakov. Galgel rachamecha aleihen. You should make it that you forgive them. Now, lo dayo shelo amar kach. Forget about the fact that he didn't give that answer, but he gave a much worse answer, one that makes us question how could it be that Hosea was such a navi. Elo amar lefana ribono shel olam. What does Hosea say back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when Hashem says banecha chatu? Kol ha'olam shelcha hu he'eviram be'uma acheres. You own the whole world. Go get a new nation. Wow, just throwing us out. Okay, I'm not saying that we're the perfect people. We make a lot of mistakes. But for a Navi to have that response, why didn't Hosea come to our defense? So Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol is having a conversation with himself. He's talking out loud. What am I going to do with this guy? What am I going to do with Hosea? This is crazy. He wants to throw out the Jewish people. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu hatches a plan. Here's the plan. Omer lo, lech v'kach isha zona. You should go marry a woman who is a zona, who is intimate with many people. V'holi lach banim zinunim. You should have children with her. Banim zinunim, children of this woman who is a prostitute. V'achar kach, omer lo, shalcha me'al panecha. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell him that he needs to marry a woman who is a harlot, and they're going to have a bunch of children. Then I'm going to ask them to get divorced. Now, obviously, this is like the experiential side of education. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is putting Hosea into a scenario where he's going to feel like HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're going to tell me you want me to get rid of my Klal Yisrael? Why don't you try it? Why don't you try it? You get married to someone and have a bunch of kids. Is it perfect? It may not be perfect. Then you're going to get rid of them. So this is actually exactly what happened because the Pesukim reflect this. But let's finish out HaKadosh Baruch Hu's conversation, Kaviyachol, that he's having with himself. If Hosea is able to get rid of the children, quote unquote, to just divorce this woman that he's married to, this Isha Zona, and their children, so then then I'll grant Hosea's wish that I'll get rid of the Jewish people. Shene'emar, all of this is reflected in the pasuk. The pasuk reads, The pasuk reads, "Vayomer Hashem el Hoshea lech kach lecha esha zenunim v'yalde zenunim ki zonos izneh haaretz me'acharei Hashem." So fine, you're supposed to go. You're supposed to go find this woman. Uchsiv, and the pasuk continues, "Vayelech vayikach is Gomer bas divlaim," and he married a zona, a woman who was a prostitute. Her name was Gomer bas divlaim, but her name was not Stam. Her name had a lot of very negative implications. Gomer, Amar Rav She'akol Gomer Ba, she was someone that a lot of people were intimate with. Bas Divlaim, as we turn to the top of Pezayin and Beis, what is Bas Divlaim? Double. Divlaim is a double, like Pa'amayim. So what does the doubling mean? Dibara, Bas Dibara. She had a bad reputation, and so did her mother. 2 generations of the same profession. Ushmuel Amar, no. What does it mean, Divlaim, from the word Devela, from a food that has a positive flavor? Shemasuka b'fiya kol kedvela. She was someone that everybody found attractive. Rabbi Yochanan Amar she'akol dashin ba kedvela. People took advantage of her, and this is clearly some type of euphemism for tashma shamita. Davar achar, some say no, that's not what Gomer meant. Gomer was a reference to something else. When her name was Gomer, Amar Rabbi Yehuda shebikshu legamer mamon she'Yisrael bi'ameh. She wanted to take away all of the money from the Jewish people, and that's what happened. Rabbi Yochanan Amar bazazu v'gamru. In fact, that occurred where they took spoils and they took all the money from the Jewish people in that community at that time. Shneimar ki avda melech haram v'yasimim ki afar ladush. They were basically like the dirt, and everybody was trampling all over the Jews. They had nothing left. Okay, story continues. So Hoshea marries Gomer. Then they had 3 children. Vatahar vateled lo bain vayomer Hashem elav. Hashem says to Hoshea, she gets pregnant, they have a baby. Kara shemo Yisrael. That should be your son's name, Yisrael. Ki od me'at ufakadti esdemei Yisrael al beis Yehu v'ishbati mimalchus beis Yisrael. I'm gonna get rid of them from the Jewish people. Then she gets pregnant again, first of the long lines. Vatahar od vateled bas vayomer lo. Kara Shema Lo Ruchama, in quotes. That is her name. Do not have Rachamim. That's a terrible name to give a child if you're ever giving advice to those who are looking for a name. The child's name was Lo Ruchama, no pity, no mercy. Kilo Osifo Darachem Es Beis Yisrael. Kodesh Baruch Hu says, I don't plan on having more Rachamim. Kina So Esa Lahema. How long do you want me to carry their Averas for? And then she had a 3rd child, Batahar. Vateled bain vayomer kara shema lo ami. You are not part of my nation. Ki atem lo ami vanochi lo ehya lachem. You're not my nation, and I'm not going to help you anymore. Now, here comes the kicker. This is where HaKadosh Baruch Hu lays on the educational moment for Hoshea. After Hoshea has these 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl with Gomer bas Divlaim. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu leHoshea. Hashem says to Hoshea, Moshe Rabcha. Shouldn't you have learned from Moshe Rabbeinu? Shekevan shedibarti imo piresh min ha'isha. Just like with Moshe Rabbeinu was poresh min ha'isha because he could get a nevuah at any time. Afata b'dol atzmecha mimena. Even you shouldn't have ever had tashma shamita. You should get rid of your wife. So this is a svara kozeves. This is not a very good svara because we know that only Moshe had such a restriction because most other Nevi'im, all other Nevi'im had their nevuah at night. They had them derech chalom. Only Moshe Rabbeinu was ba'asbaklar yahami'ir, was able to connect to a Kadosh Baruch Hu directly. So the Gemara's argument that he should divorce his wife because of Moshe, the Meforshim struggle with this. Why are you saying that? That doesn't really work out very well. Either way, what's Hoshea's response about a quarter of the way down? Amar lo. Hoshea says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono shel olam, yesh li banim mimena. We have children together, me and Gomer bas Divlaim. Ve'in ani achol lehotzia velo legarsha. I can't kick her out and I can't divorce her. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, exactly. Why did you tell me to go find the Jews, to go find another nation to replace the Jews because banecha chatu, because the Jews sin? Amar le HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Uma ata, you, Hoshea, sheishtecha zona, your wife is a prostitute. Uvanecha b'nei zenunim, and your children are the children of a prostitute. You're not even sure they're your kids. Ve'en ata yodeim shelcha heinim shel acherim hein. And kach, that was the answer that you gave. When I said banecha chatu, you said, out with them. You don't even know that these are your children. You're not willing to get rid of them. Yisrael, but the Jewish people, Shein Banai, they're my children. Bnei Bachunai, they're the children of my tested ones. Bnei Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the children of our forefathers. Echad me'arba kinyonim shekanisi be'olami. One of the 4 kinyonim that I, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, have in this world. And then the Gemara interjects what those 4 are. Number 1, Torah kinyan echad. That's the first one. Dechsiv Hashem kanani reshis darko. The second kinyan that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has is shamayim va'aretz. That's kinyan echad. Dechsiv kona shamayim va'aretz. The Beis HaMikdash is kinyan echad. Dechsiv har zeh kansa yamino. This mountain. And Yisrael kinyan echad. Dechsiv amzu kanisa. Anyways, that's just like in brackets. So then the Gemara continues, Ve'ata amarta he'eviram be'uma acheres. That's crazy. You're not even sure that these children are your children. And you're not even willing to divorce. I know these are my children, says the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and I'm just not willing to get rid of them. Your answer is a bad answer. That's just not right. So the curtain has been peeled back, and Hosea recognizes what happened. Kevan sheyoda shechata. Once Hosea recognized his mistake, then he made another mistake. Amad levakesh rachamim al atzmo. And he says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Please forgive me. Can you help me? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is angry at this point. Amar lo, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ad she'atam mevakesh rachamim al atzmecha. Before you sit here and grovel in front of me to help you, bakesh rachamim al Yisrael. Your job is not you. You're on a puppet string for me. Your job is to help Klal Yisrael. Why are you davening for yourself? You should be davening for the Klal. Shegazarti lehem shalosh gzeros babu recha. They have 3 bad gzeros because of you. You should be davening. Amaru vikesh rachamim uvatel gzera. That's taka, the Musar hit. Now he finally recognized what happened. Hosea began to daven. Amaru vikesh rachamim. That Hosea requested from HaKadosh Baruch Hu rachamim for Klal Yisrael, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu had rachamim and uvatel gzera. V'hischil levarachan. And then, after we turned a corner, after Hosea recognized that he made an error in daven, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu started giving brachos to the Jewish people, Shnei Emar. And we'll see a reversal of the languages of the children that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Hosea to name the children of Gomer Bas Divlaim. We're almost halfway down. Pei Zayin Amud Beis, V'haya mispar b'nei Yisrael kechol hayam v'gomer. The Jews will be numerous like the chol hayam, like the grains of sand. And in a place where I would have thought it was lo ami, of course, referencing the name of the child, that was lo ami. Yomar lahem b'nei kel chai. They are in fact my children. V'nikbetzu b'nei Yehuda b'nei Yisrael yachtav. Everyone's going to gather together. And then it also says Uzrasiha li be'eretz richamti es lo ruchama. I will have rachamim on those who are lo ruchama, a play off of the name of the daughter of lo ruchama. Amarti lo ami amiata. Fine, very good. End of story. The Gemara now goes into a number of brief agadatas, and then we'll wrap up for the night. Amar of Yochanan, oy la l'rabbanus shemikaveres es ba'aleha. Not rabbanus in the rabbinic form, but rabbanus in the leadership of the kingdom form. People who are in a makom sirara, those who are in serious leadership positions. Shemikaveres es ba'aleha. Those people end up dying young. Shein lecha kol navi v'navi shelo kipeach arba melachim b'yomam. The Navi, he managed to live, but all of them ended up having about 4 kings during their tenure as a Navi. Shenemar, as the Pasuk writes. The Pasuk writes, let me find it so I could read it properly. The Pasuk is Chazon Yeshayahu ben Amos, famous Pasuk from Yeshaya, the famous Haftorah. Chazon Yeshayahu ben Amos, Asher Chaza al Yehuda Yerushalayim. And who did Yeshayahu the Navi see? Bimei Uziyahu, Yosam, Achaz, Yechizkiyo Malchei Yehuda. These are 4 different kings that he saw during his reign. So that pasuk tells us about the fact that the Rabbanah says Mekaberes says Be'aleha. Next, Amar of Yochanan, Mipnei ma zacha Yeravam ben Yoash, Melech Yisrael, Lihimano sim Malchei Yehuda. Why is it that the Navi specifically mentions Yeravam ben Yoash, who was a Melech of Yisrael, amongst the kings of Malchei Yehuda? So first of all, why is that a Maila? Weren't the Malchei Yisrael also Chashuv? So the Meforshim here explain that's because the Davidic dynasty only emanated from Yehuda. So they kind of were on another plateau. So when they're listing a number of the kings of Yehuda, they also included a king of Yisrael, of Yeravam ben Yoash. Why was he included in that more chashuv list of the Malchei Yehuda? Answers the Gemara 3 lines before the wide lines, al Amos. Because the story, which we will see in a moment, that Yeravam ben Yoash was not willing to accept Lashon Hara about Amos, even though it was quite personal. Says the Gemara, Minala de'imne, how do we know that Yeravam ben Yoash was included with the Malchei Yehuda? Because of what the pasuk writes. The pasuk writes, Dichsiv. The pasuk says, Devar Hashem asher haya el Hoshea ben Be'eri b'mei Uzziah Yosam achaz Yechizkiah malchei Yehuda. All of those kings, and look who's added in the pasuk. Uvimei Yeravam ben Yoash melech Yisrael. So we see the pasuk specifically includes Yeravam ben Yoash amongst the list of malchei Yehuda. And what was the story whereby he did not accept Lashon Hara about Amos? Because the pasuk teaches us as follows, first long line, you got people who are plotting against you. The pasuk continues later and says, Amar Amos Amos was saying that you're going to get killed. Amar, what was Yeravam's response? It's Lashon Hara. He says, Chas v'shalom Amar oso tzadik kach. There's no way that Amos would have said that. Amos was a holy yid. He's not going to say that I'm going to die. And then here's the crazier part. V'im Amar, and even if he did say it, ma'eh eselo, Shechina amralo. He's so close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it must be from the Shechina. That is a very frum perspective on people who are issuing threats to you. The poskim do write that in cases like this, when you hear Lashon Hara, and there is a risk, you're allowed to mitigate that risk in behavior to avoid dangerous scenarios, whatever it may be. But to be makabel the Lashon Hara emotionally, that is something which is not allowed. This is a very lofty level. The poskim also speak about the fact that sometimes to hear someone vent is considered an act of chesed, and sometimes that venting may include Lashon Hara. So the poskim say you're technically allowed, this is a very, very tall order, you're technically allowed to listen if someone needs to vent about someone else's Lashon Hara, Rechilus, whatever it is, you're technically allowed to listen, provided that you're not deeply makabel the Lashon Hara. You can listen and validate, but it doesn't mean that what they're saying is true, and you're not allowed to believe that what they're saying is true. So here, Yeravam ben Yoash took it to the next level. Someone threatened to kill him. He's like, I don't believe you, and even if it is true, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the world. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, 2-3 lines into the wide lines, Afilu b'shas kaso shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even when Hashem is angry, Zocher es harachamim. He also, at the same time, concurrently will remember to be merciful. I'm not going to add more. I'm going to have mercy on the Jewish people. Reb Yossi bar Reb Chanina Amar Mehacha. No, we learned from another pasuk. I'm going to carry their averos. One last one. The Gemara says, "V'amar Rebbe Lazar lo higla Kodesh Baruch Hu es Yisrael lebein ha'umos el kadeshi tosva leim gerim." Unbelievable. The only reason why the Jewish people were scattered around the world between the umos ha'olam was so that we could bring in gerim. We are not a proselytizing religion. In fact, we know that, I'll just use the word loosely, halachically, that when a ger approaches, we push them away 3 times. We push them away to make sure that they understand that it's a beautiful burden, but it's still a burden. We're not helping them. We're not helping them if their neshama is now a neshama of a yid and they have 613 burdens on their neshama. Right now they're a ben noach, they only have 7. So if you push someone into gerus and you end up in a scenario where they've become halachically Jewish, but they're not going to be halachically frum, you've hurt them. And in fact, the Lubavitcher Rebbe was of the opinion that there's a mitzvah for kiruv by Bnei Noach because they have Sheva mitzvahs to keep. So I ran into this scenario as a mom. I got a phone call from someone who identified themselves as a Noahide. Can you please do the circumcision of our child? Mom, dad, Jewish? Nobody's Jewish. Where'd we get your number from? They gave me a name of someone in the community, Rabbi so-and-so. He's our rabbi, a frum guy. He's a frum guy. So I ended up doing the circumcision. I had some shilas. I ended up doing the circumcision, of course, without brachos. The baby's a goy d'oraisa, but he's a ben noach. So I did the circumcision. The rabbi was there, and I went over to him afterwards and said, "My hi, why are you there, rabbi?" He said, "I have a chavrusa with him every single week." I'm like, "Why?" I mean, I just don't understand like what's going on. He said the Lubavitcher Rebbe held that because they have a neshama and because their neshama has a responsibility of Sheva mitzvot, so Sheva mitzvot b'nei noach, there's a mitzvah to do kiruv. It's fascinating. I had no idea. Okay, so it says the Gemara, what does this mean that we were put into the umos ha'olam, where we are right now? Right now is our opportunity to generate more gerim. Sheitos v'olem gerim shene'amar. What does the pasuk say? Uzrasi ali ba'aretz. I'm going to plant in the ground. Klum adam zarei asa. Nobody plants a fixed amount of seeds. Ella lahachnis kama kurin, to bring in a lot more. So the Meforshim here point out that what we're talking about is as follows, and this is really a very powerful idea. If our consequence for not being good was to just be scattered amongst the world, the Kadosh Baruch Hu would have given us another punishment. Instead, it's the opposite, is that we are specifically being given this so that you got to earn your keep now. You got to go out there and you got to make sure that you're a light unto the nations, that your mamish doing your job. And that's what this Gemara is referencing according to some of the Meforshim. Rav Yochanan Amar Mehacha was from a different pasuk, Berachamti es lo ruchama. That we're going to have mercy on those who don't yet have mercy on them. They don't see all of the godless of the Torah yet. They're not yet obligated in the whole Torah. So that is what this pasuk means, to teach us that we were only put among the umos ha'olam sheitos v'alein gerim, to increase the number of gerim, not by active proselytizing, but by mamish being a walking kiddush Hashem, that people should see, if this is the Torah, if this is how happy the person is, then that's a remarkable thing. I was just learning a couple nights ago with Hirsch. We were learning about this Nefesh HaChaim, that he speaks about this idea that if you're a Yid, your actions make a huge difference. They impact the all of the olamos and all of the spheros. If that's what it means to be a Yid, that you get to have that kind of impact, you have that kind of power. That's a beautiful and powerful thing, and a big responsibility all at the same time. So if someone who's not yet part of the fold, who's still not a Yid, they're not yet Zochet to have all 613 commandments as a burden on their neshama, then we should be that light for them to see how beautiful it actually is to be a Yid. We'll stop here. Mir Hashem will pick up tomorrow night 2/3 of the way down at Amar Rav Yochanan Mishur Moshe ben Yochai. Have a beautiful night.